So I'm just going down to somewhere downfield to where the script can start to take over after that. And this looks good enough. Oh, from last time. Let's quick save here, so if we have to do this again, it's not so bad. So here I bring up the terminal for the kOS mod. And let's run my script, which I'll be showing the details of my changes later, but for right now, let's just watch it. So one of the changes I made is so that if the pitch is, or if the climb rate is way off from what it wanted, it goes into a panic mode, where it just sets it back to flat bank and tries to fix the pitch first before it goes back to actually doing the turn. So here's the turn it's attempting. That's the point it's temporarily aiming at along this red line, which I realize probably doesn't show up very well in the feed, but where it says waypoint line, there's a thin red line. And the aim point is a spot along that line, and as I get closer to it, the aim point moves closer to the end. Yeah, the script automatically does the throttle control as well. That was already done last episode. And actually, I changed the throttle control to a PD controller instead of a PI controller, and it works way better. So as my angle to this spot gets closer, the aim point moves more up here. And you can see that in the display right here. This 29 degrees is the angle, if you back off here, between me, this point, and this point. As that gets smaller, the aim point moves closer and closer to the head. The effect being that my ship curves nicely, just comes right in line where I want it to be. I still didn't implement the idea of there being a big giant plane here, a big giant wall that I go through to trigger the next waypoint. It's still based on the sphere around a radius. I could fix that, but the tricky part is, if I start the plane already past that wall over here, I don't want it to trigger thinking it already hit the waypoint, when what I really want it to do is come back here and start from over here. Because of the complication of fixing that, I didn't bother putting that in. But as you can see, the steering is much, much cleaner than it was before. I'm getting it to come in much nicer. Now, if you look here, I've also made it so that to handle different aircraft designs, I can use the exaction group numbers to change what the script wants to try to land at. Now, what I'm going to do here is, pressing 2, I'm going to up the landing speed to an absurd number that actually doesn't work. That's on purpose. I'm trying to make it fail. So I'm going to set a landing speed that's too high, deliberately, so you can watch the failure mode. I'm going to try to land, but it'll be going too fast, so that by the time it would come down, it would be too far down the runway. So it comes in nicely. You can see the red is the intended glide slope. Slowly starting to pull up. Just close enough to the ground to kick out the gear. It's coming in nicely. Will it pull up in time? Now it pulls up. And the problem is, it's going to pull up a bit much here because it's trying to go fast. Faster than it should. And I'm deliberately doing that because I want to show a failure the first time. So it comes in, and watch the screen up here. Abort, go around, less than half of runway left. And what it's doing is checking its position versus VASI East and VASI West. When it gets closer to East than West, it goes, nope, I'm not going to try and land, I've gone too far. Kicks the throttle up, adds a couple of additional waypoints, one up here and one over there, and uses those to go around and have a second pass. And again, I am not touching any controls here. My hands are up here, and the only thing I'm doing is moving the camera. So far, this has become pretty good. I'm liking how this works. I also kind of like the look of the plane, too. It's kind of neat. These little, the rudder fins aiming down were meant to look like the sort of feet that sort of drag behind a bird in flight. One of these big birds that looks this way tends to have those draggy feet, which actually are part of the aerodynamics. They act as basically the rudder and tail. So what I'm going to do to alleviate a little boredom here is I'm going to use the action group here to up the cruising speed, just to get it out there a little quicker, and then I'll bring it back down later. And I will lower the landing speed. I've discovered through experimentation this plane seems to like landing at about 70. But as you can see, the abort, I told it to go out here to a point that's not quite lined up with the runway. I put a point about 4 kilometers out from the line, and that's the first place it aims at. For its missed approach left turn pattern to get back into the traffic, so to speak. Now I started this with the sun low in the sky because I wanted to see my shadow in front of me as I landed, but it looks like I started it a little too late in the afternoon because that's going to go behind the mountains by the time we land. Okay, now I'm bringing back to a more sane cruising speed. Now it's attempting to go over here. This point here is in line with the runway over here. And as it gets closer, this will shift up towards the tip, causing it to start banking back as it starts getting closer to the line. When it gets within 500 meters of the point, then it starts to switch to the next one. So here you can see in the display the compass heading it's trying to aim for, where it actually is aimed right now, how it wants to try to bank based upon that, the vertical speed it wants. This part's a bit fiddly, the vertical speed bit. That's its reaction on the pitch control and the throttle control spools up and is kind of slow. So sometimes the landings are a little unpredictable. Here it comes in, banking up nicely. Now it's finally slowing down more as it tries to hit this 70 upon landing. Now speed is currently down to 93, still trying to make it lower. Decided to hit the gear down when it got to a low enough altitude. Throttle's kicking in a bit because it's starting to slow down too much, but it immediately drops back a bit. It only needed to kick it in a little. Now it's on the final part, trying to flare it out to see if it can get the vertical speed down to 1.5 meters a second down. And here it comes. And nice. Brakes are on. In fact, the script ends as soon as it touches down and puts the brakes on and just lets it coast to a stop at that point. So because the touchdown occurred before the halfway point, it went ahead and accepted it. And as you can see up here, it did turn the brakes on, and they're slowing it down eventually. This is a very heavy craft. It takes time for it to finally slow to a landing. I have thought about the idea of making it actually able to measure its own performance. But, for now I'm pretty happy that I've got this much to work. Just warping into daylight again, so